Shalom uvracha from Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. This evening, with the help of Hashem, we're privileged to study the Haftarah of Parshat Behar-Bechukotai, serving this year as well as the Haftarah of the joint Parshiot of Behar and Bechukotai. This Shabbat we read two Torah sections. In keeping with the general rule, we read the Haftarah of the second. This is our second Haftarah series, and we're privileged this evening to study the Haftarah from the book of Jeremiah, the Haftarah of Parshat Bechukotai, taken from the 16th and 17th chapters of Jeremiah, Perek Tet Zayin, Perek Yud Zayin of Sefer Yirmiyahu. There's a phrase towards the very end of the Haftarah which has intrigued me for a very, very long time, and I'd like to study these words with you. The expression that's used there, the three words of focus this evening, sentence 13 of chapter 17, Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Yud Gimel, Mikvei Yisrael Hashem. Mikvei Yisrael Hashem. Mikvei, meaning from the word tikva, from the root kuf vav hey, which means to hope. God is the hope of the Jewish people. The Jewish people understand that God, if we're looking for a source of tikva, if we're looking for a source of hope, it is God. God will help us. God will assist us. God will be there for us. Mikvei Yisrael Hashem. And in several places in the book of Yirmiyahu, the prophet refers to Hashem by the term Mikvei Yisrael. For instance, in chapter 14, verse 8, we read, Mikvei Yisrael, Moshi'o Be'et Sarah. The hope, the source of salvation, the source of hope of the Jewish people, who brings salvation to the Jewish nation in all of their times of need, in all of their times of sorrow, in all of their times of difficulty. Mikvei Yisrael. Or, if you study chapter 50, Perek Nun, Pasuk Zayin, chapter 50, verse 7, again, we find that God is referred to as Mikvei Avotehem. God is the source of hope for the ancestors, for the people of Israel. Hashem is Mikvei Avotehem. So that's pretty straightforward, except it's interesting to point out that there's a completely different usage of the word mikveh or mikveh in Tanakh. I think that most people sitting here, and perhaps most of the people viewing this as well, know the word mikveh from a very different context. We have in several places in Tanakh the notion that when bodies of water are gathered together, different kinds of pools or streams of water, it's called a mikveh. That's a term that's used up to and including today in all forms of spoken Hebrew. And this term already appears at the very beginning of the Torah. In the earliest part of Torah literature, we find in the creation of the world, chapter 1, in the story of the creation, it speaks about God gathering together the water. Remember when there was a dry land, and if you want to follow it, it's in sentence 9 and sentence 10 of chapter 1. Yikavu hamayim, the water shall be gathered together. Vayikra Elokim, sentence 10. Chapter 1, sentence 10 of Genesis. Perek Aleph Pasuk Yud. Vayikra Elokim la'yabasha eretz u lemikvei hamayim, mikvei. The gathering together of the water he called seas. It was referred to as the sea. What's the connection between mikveh and mikveh? The same exact words, same exact letters, same exact words, same exact pronunciation. Mikveh, mikveh. In Yirmiyahu, we're learning in the Haftarah, Mikveh Yisrael, the source of hope, and in the Torah in several places. Perhaps you remember in the book of Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verse 36, we read about certain sources of purification. Ach ma'ayan uvar mikvei mayim. Ach mayan uvar mikvei mayim yeh tahor. Only a certain form of a spring or a cistern, a gathering of water, a mikvei mayim will remain pure. Mikvei, the same word. Or remember in the plague in Egypt, when God is destroying the Egyptian people, parts of the Egyptian people, everyone remembers the story of the waters that turned to blood. Chapter 7, verse 19 of Exodus. For example, Pasuk Yutet. Kach matchan teyavcha al meimei Mitzrayim, al naharotam, al yorehem, al agmehem, on all of the different rivers of Egypt. Va'al kol mikvei. Mikvei, and all of the mikvei, all the gatherings of the water. I was looking for a way of bringing together the mikveh and the mikveh. Just a grammatical note. I don't want to sound too technical, but there are those who pronounce this word. The question is, what's the proper pronunciation of the word? Is it mikveh or is it mikvah? Now, I think that most people pronounce it mikveh. I think when we speak about it, is that correct? Most people pronounce it. Maybe they pronounce it in a slightly different emphasis on a different syllable, maybe. But what mikveh? But mikveh, right? At least in one place in Tanakh, we do find the word mikvah. So it could be in the book of Yeshayahu, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 22. It was the only place I was able to find. Maybe it's other places also, but in chapter 22 of Yeshayahu, he refers to the body of water being joined together by the word of Perik Kavbet Pasuk Yud Aleph 22:11 of Isaiah. Mikvah asitem, with a kamatz under the vav. Mikvah asitem. So I don't know, is mikvah, mikveh. The dot Mikra says we have many words that have two forms. The word mar'ah, the appearance of God, the vision of God is referred to as mar'ah. It's referred to as mar'eh. We have the word mikna, something which is acquired. So we have in biblical Hebrew we have mikna and we have mikneh. So he says, okay, it could be two different forms of mikvah and mikveh. But I was thinking this week especially, both in preparation for our discussion of the Haftarah, as well as being inspired by the song that was sung many hundreds of thousands of times just a few days ago on Lag BaOmer. And for some reason which could be discussed, maybe beyond the scope of our discussion this evening, one of the most famous songs sung on Lag BaOmer is the song about Rabbi Akiva's pronouncement about the holiness of the Jewish people. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashrechem, it's taken from the. We have some vocalists here who can sing it for me. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Amar, sorry?
Every Chevra Kadisha says it over the mate.
No. That's Akavya ben Mahalalel. Amar Rabbi Akiva said on that's Akavya ben Mahalalel. That's a teacher that's different. This is Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashrechem Yisrael. Right, so is that a famous song like one? Ashrechem Yisrael. Yeah, and they sing. We don't sing too many Mishnayot in the Jewish community. How many Mishnayot can you name that we all sing together? But here, at least the last chapter, maybe the very last Mishnah of Tractate Yoma, the section of the Mishnah dealing with the laws of Yom Kippur. Those people who were in Miron this week, over and over again. People not far from here, Shimon HaTzadik, it's a famous Lag BaOmer song. Correct or not? I mean, what? Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashrechem Yisrael, fortunate are you, O the Jewish people. Lifnei mi atem mitaharim. Consider, before whom are you becoming pure? Mi mitaheretchem. Who is the source of your purity? Avichem Shabashamayim, your father in heaven. Wow. You're connected to the highest source of purity. You're being purified before God. Of course, this is contextually, this is connected to Yom Kippur, and it was extended because of Rabbi Akiva's connection to Lag BaOmer, maybe the cessation of the demise of Rabbi Akiva's students, the fact that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is a student of Rabbi Akiva. I don't know how It made its way into the Lag BaOmer ways, but it surely did. And then he says, V'omer, and he quotes another verse as a proof text that God is the source of purity of the Jewish people. And which proof text does he quote? He quotes the text from Yirmiyahu, from the Haftarah of this week. First of all, I thought it was so beautiful that everybody's singing the Haftarah, in a certain sense. Everybody's walking around, V'omer, 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 V'omer. Not to that tune. Mikvei Yisrael Hashem. And it also says, and the text also says, Mikvei Yisrael Hashem. God is the source of mikveh. God is the source of salvation. God is the source of hope for the Jewish nation. Now listen to the teaching of Rabbi Akiva. Very, very unusual teaching. And if I wouldn't know that it's the teaching of Rabbi Akiva, I would never think that Rabbi Akiva would offer such a teaching. It sounds almost superimposed on the words. Because again, in Yirmiyahu, when he speaks about mikveh Yisrael, what does the word mikveh mean? It means hope. And Rabbi Akiva, in the Mishnah, and I'm reading from the Mishnah here, Omer mikveh Yisrael Hashem, God is the source of hope for the Jewish people. But Rabbi Akiva's drasha is on the word mikveh. Because mikveh does not only mean hope, mikveh also means what kind of water? Purifying waters, yes? So he says, Ma mikveh. Or in some verse, Ma ha-mikveh. Ma mikveh. Mitaheret ha-timeim. Af HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mitaheret Yisrael. The same way the mikveh. The same way the ritual waters of the ritualarium. The same way the ritual waters of the mikveh bring purity to those who are not pure. Bring purity to the defiled. Afakadosh Baruch Hu. God is mikveh Yisrael. So in a certain sense, God is the big mikveh. In a certain sense, God is the mikveh. That's a drasha of Rabbi Akiva. This is a drasha of a Tana. That Rabbi Akiva learns mikveh Yisrael to mean mikveh. It's a chidush gadol. That the simple interpretation is mikveh is the source of hope, and Rabbi Akiva extends it to mean that God is the purifying, so to speak. Of course, God represents the pure waters of purification for the entire Jewish people. Ma mikveh mitaheret ha-timeim, af HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitaheret Yisrael. That God serves as the mikveh. So it's pretty clear. I could be wrong that at least for me, if I didn't know that this was a teaching in the Mishnah, and someone would quote this teaching to me, I would have thought that this was introduced, by maybe a certain great, religious thinker over the generations, maybe a certain grand rabbi, a rebbe, or a Hasidic master. It doesn't sound like a typical teaching of the Mishnah. It sounds like almost like a teaching which it's difficult to find a parallel to this. Mikveh and mikveh. However you learn it, it's pretty clear that Rabbi Akiva, that the Mishnah is teaching us, that the two usages of mikveh have to be connected, because as students of Rabbi Akiva, as students of the Mishnah, we understand that the two are really one. The question then becomes, what is the connection between mikveh, hope, and mikveh, the mikveh mayim, the waters of purification? Can we suggest that maybe the secret of all the waters of purification, what do those waters accomplish in this world? We hope for a world where, v'zarakti alechem mayim tahorim utahartem. The world should be on the highest level of purification, the highest level of purity. But there are times when people feel so dejected, where they feel so rejected. We're talking now even in biblical times. I'm not talking about only the narrow usage of mikveh in modern times. I mean, today it's limited to very specific kinds of usages. But in the times of the temple, you know how many various forms of impurity required an individual to immerse in a mikveh? Not just women, visiting the mikveh once a month. But mikveh was a major process of removing impurity. Still is. It still is. Each one in its own way. It could be that the very fact that we have mikvahot is the hope of the Jewish nation. Our nation could not continue without mikveh. That's the whole future of the Jewish people is connected to mikveh. That's the whole family life. The whole taharat mishpacha is connected to that. But even in its biblical usage, even in the usage where people who were in a state of tum'ah, maybe many of them felt so hopeless. Many of them felt like, oh, forget it. It's all over for me. I'm tameh. I'm so removed from God. I'm so removed from tahara. I'm so removed from purification. Where can I turn? And there are so many people in the world, each one in his or her own way of that personal challenge, who feels that because of some kind of contact with some form of impurity, they have lost their sense of hope. Can we suggest that the teaching of Rabbi Akiva, that the usage of mikveh in both of these kinds of contexts teach us that the secret of the purification of the waters of mikveh has something to do with the fact that every mikveh is really a great source of hope. Every mikveh is not just a gathering of water. Every mikveh is a source of tikvah. For all of those people who feel, what should I do now? What should you do now? Why don't you try immersing in a mikveh? Why don't you try starting all over again? Maybe the embryonic state of a certain level of being surrounded by water. Maybe the state of birth, where the waters break. Maybe emerging from a mikveh is starting all over again. Everyone and anyone has a mikveh. Everyone has a mikveh in the sense of the body of water, but everyone has a sense of mikveh in the sense of tikvah as well. There's always hope. There's always a road for purification. Everyone should find the proper level of mikveh. Yirmiyahu is teaching us in our Haftarah that God is ultimately the mikveh. Ma mikveh metayeret atmeim, afakadosh baruch hu metayeret Yisrael. Maybe one possibility is to immerse in a physical body of mikveh water. That's a source of purity. And in the spiritual, conceptual sense, to connect to the ultimate level of mikveh, to the ultimate level of purification, connected to the Creator of the world, to the one who loves us more than anyone else in the whole world. And maybe God is always there to tell us, no matter what you've done, no matter where you've gone, no matter what source of impurity you were involved in, mikveh, there's a way to get out of it. Immerse in the mikveh of Yirmiyahu's mikveh Yisrael Hashem. Thank you so much for listening.